13 weeks ago, USS Sulaco was reported destroyed. And yet, it's on the other side of that door in orbit over LV-426.
Rhino 2-1, this is Sephora Actual. Winter is en route to aid with Casevac. What the hell is going on?
When we first thought about what we wanted to do with Aliens, back before we'd even approached, getting the license, the fantasy for us was always imagining what a sequel to the second Alien film would be like, and that's James Cameron's Aliens movie, and how that film introduced the concept of Colonial Marines. The idea that in this world, in this universe where we're starting to explore the galaxy, where we've found some other things out there, bugs, from time to time when we're colonizing other planets, that there would need to be a military force to deal with some certain hostile situations. And that's a really interesting and exciting idea, especially when we take these Colonial Marines and pit them against this new xenomorph that was discovered in the films, this thing that is not just a dumb little bug that can be squashed, but something that is horrifying, very resilient, something that it has concentrated acid for blood. It can take you, and in order to create more of itself, will need to embed people with an embryo that grows into an alien that bursts violently out of their chest. I mean, it's just such a horrific creature, and to pit those things against badass soldiers is such an exciting concept. The film Aliens was expertly done and really scratched the surface on what other kinds of things we could imagine with this fantasy, and that's one of the reasons why I think the film has been you can see how many things it's influenced in popular culture, in media, and not even just science fiction, but all kinds of entertainment. And to be able to play in the actual canon, and to be able to make the story sequel to the films in video game form is awesome. Like, the sequel to the movies is a video game. How cool is that? That's how important a medium has become. Yeah. As a fan, it's really important. The canon of any important fiction is really interesting to think about. Because especially when we have these great films we can look at, right? Because each filmmaker wants to make a mark, each filmmaker wants to create a new story and craft a new story, but they also have to think about how to respect the rules that have been put in place by the filmmakers before them. And that's effectively the approach that we took. We wanted to bring a new story to the table, a new experience to the table, but we absolutely have the fantasy as a video game to get into the boots of these Colonial Marines. I want to explore the Sulaco. I want to go and revisit Hadley's Hope, the colony where it all took place, and I want to explore the derelict ship, and I want to use the equipment that the Colonial Marines used. And as a video game, I can do that. But I didn't want to just rehash the story of the film. I want a new story. So we had to craft a sequel story that makes it make sense for us to revisit these experiences and these places, but have the events that take place be all new events. And this is really neat because when we go back to, say, Hadley's Hope, we can see the evidence of the characters that were in the film. We see what they left behind, what they did when they were there, but we're creating new experiences with what takes place. So it's really kind of a neat thing to play with. I think it's something none of the movies have been able to do, and it's fun that we're able to do it in a video game. There's a few things that we think are really, really important when we look at the Aliens franchise, the essence of the franchise. I think that on some of it's thematic, and some of it's about the kinds of experiences that take place. And what's neat about a video game is it's not confined to sort of 90 minutes of what you consume passively, as an audience. Like, you are a participant, and we have a lot more space and time that we could work with, which means that we can play with some of the different themes and experiences that were different between the movies. For example, if we think about the first Alien film, it was a lot more like a survival horror kind of genre. It was suspense and tension. And when we think of the sequel, Aliens, it's a lot more action. It's like a war movie. In the scope of the video game, we can actually play with the ebbs and tides of those feelings. There are moments in the video game where you're not shooting at things that are coming out of the walls in a full war movie. It's actually kind of quiet, and you don't know where the enemy's going to be, and there's this tension that builds up as you explore, and there's this creepiness that starts to happen, and that's so much fun because that tension really almost makes your muscles tense, when you get yourself immersed into it. But then there's other times when it is all-out war, and it's just balls-to-the-wall action, and it feels very intense and very exciting, and your skills are tested. You're not just watching it unfold, but you're participating in it. And if you can make good decisions about your target prioritization, if you can develop enough skill to react and aim and shoot and take those enemy down, you might survive, and you might help your allies survive. But if you can't, the aliens are ruthless. They will kill you. They will kill you. And being able to move around those different feelings. There's also like thematic and storytelling kind of staples, dealing with concepts of what it means to be a human, and dealing with the fact that we have emotions and we care for one another, that we reproduce the way we do, and we think about the way the xenomorphs reproduce, and there's lots of different kind of things at play there, and we play with those themes in the narrative as well, and that's been a lot of fun to create a narrative structure that feels right at home with the themes that we're used to, but is a new story as well. There's also another kind of there's a lot of maternal kind of influences in the storytelling in the Aliens movies. It also kind of extends to the nature of how these organizations fit together, corporations versus people, and power versus those that are coming up, and we deal with those themes as well in the course of the story, and it's really fun to be. It's amazing actually just to have been honored and trusted to be able to spend time in this space, and to finally be able to play in this space that has influenced us for so many years is a thrill. When we created the competitive game, right off the bat, it's really important to imagine the fundamental battle between human Marines versus xenomorphs. And we decided that we wanted to have a competitive game where humans can be Colonial Marines or human players can control xenomorphs, which means they have completely different skills, capabilities, offensive and defensive moves. And this makes what is ultimately an asymmetrical competitive game. And it's difficult, right? Because we're used to working in and playing games where the two sides are exactly the same, and everybody has access to the same tools and the same abilities. And so to build a balanced game where the two sides have completely different capabilities requires a lot of commitment to it, and requires a lot of iteration. And the thing that gets you there is just playing the game over and over again, understanding where it's not balanced, and iterating and affecting that. And so we have play tests every day at Gearbox. We have a truth team lab where we're doing focus tests every day. We're playing as developers. We're watching people off the street play, people that have never played the game before, and we're playing the game together with people. And over time we can iterate and get there, and it's really exciting because it's quite fun. The competitive game is, I think it's the best thing we've done as a studio in the competitive space since we worked on Counter-Strike like over a decade ago. So that's really neat to be able to commit so much to a competitive game, and I'm thrilled with it. And I also like that there are a lot of choices out there with competitive games that are fundamentally symmetrical. And so it's really neat that the franchise kind of demands this asymmetrical style, which we don't get a lot of. And it's really, if especially for people like me who play a lot of games, I'm starting to get bored of the same kind of things. So it's really kind of fun to have something that's a little bit different. The last great asymmetrical game that I played was Left 4 Dead, and that was a few years ago. So it's really neat to have a new asymmetrical game that I can dive into and have a lot of fun with. Yeah. So when we think about the motion detector, in the movie, it was really clear that there's a trade-off between your ability to use the motion detector and your ability to effectively fire your weapon. And certainly, you could have a pistol out and kind of duel there, but that trade-off is really interesting. So you're trading situational awareness with offensive capability. When you have a motion tracker out, you have incredible situational awareness, because even if the enemy is behind a wall or in a ceiling or somewhere where you can't see it, you know where it is, you know how far away it is from you, because the machine can detect its movement. Now, it's not perfect. Sometimes it detects things that are moving that aren't enemies, but other things that just happen to be moving in the environment. But it's very useful as a situational awareness tool. But when I'm focused on that, I don't have the ability to shoot, and I'm not effective when I do. So these things trade off. I can focus on shooting because I know where the enemy is and I want to get him, or I can focus on situational awareness, and I have to kind of trade off between how I'm prioritizing these things. And that's just one balance, and it's informed by the movie. It's informed by the film. One of the neat things about the movie is they showed us a lot. The film showed us a lot, but they also hinted at things that they didn't show us, and that gives us opportunity to do even more. For example, there's this really cool part in Aliens when Bill Paxton's character, Private Hudson, is talking about all the cool weapons they've got. He's like, we've got phase plasma rifles, we've got sonic electronic ball busters, and we had to think, what's a sonic electronic ball buster? We should make that. And we had to dream up what that is, and we came up with some really clever thinking. Like, what would a Marine refer to as a sonic electronic ball buster? So we went, okay, usually things are acronyms, so SEBB, BB, like sonic electronic something something BB. BB also in the military is a bouncing Betty, which is a kind of grenade which when it explodes, it doesn't just blow up at the base, it actually pops itself up into the air to explode there. So the blast goes out wider. It's not dissipated by the ground. It actually so imagine one of these things that goes up to about waist height, sends out a lot of shrapnel at about waist height. That sounds like a ball buster. So the Marines would take a sonic electronic bouncing Betty and call it a sonic electronic ball buster, and that made perfect sense. So that's so we got to create a weapon that made perfect sense in the fiction, and that's not the only example of that. And there's also examples of xenomorph types and other enemies and obstacles that you'll find in the game that we take hints from the movies and we explore those and flesh those out in detail that hasn't been fleshed out before. Yeah, the first moment that I thought this project was going to happen was back when we first started looking around, trying to see who we would talk to about doing Aliens. There was a meeting that Brian Martell had. He's one of my partners, one of the owners of Gearbox. He sat down with Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott created this universe. Directed, storyboarded the first Alien film, and he started this whole thing, and they sat down together and they talked about a number of things, and Brian came back from that discussion very excited, very animated about Aliens, and he reported that Ridley was too, and that to me was the first moment that I knew this project was probably something that was going to happen. And since then, there's been so many great opportunities to talk with people that are involved in the films. We've got a lot of the actors that were in the movies as characters in the game, reprising their roles. We get the likenesses and the voices. When you see Hicks, and it's Bill Paxton, or sorry, it's Michael Biehn as Hicks. Bill Paxton was Hudson. When you see Hicks and you hear his voice, and it's Michael Biehn playing himself, or Lance Henriksen as Bishop, the android. I mean, it's super authentic and super legitimate. And then there's other folks behind the scenes too, like Sid Mead. Sid is a futurist, a concept artist. For Ridley Scott, he created the Nostromo, the ship. He designed the ship. For James Cameron, he designed the Sulaco and Hadley's Hope, and all of the spaces and all those environments. And he became part of our team for a while, fleshing out all of those areas that were never in the movie. Right? They just built a few sets in the movie, so he designed the whole ships and the whole outpost, so we could build all of the spaces so that you could explore them in the game. and that was awesome. I mean, Sid's a legend. Sid invented the light cycle, for Tron and Disney. Like, Sid just walks on water. All the stuff in Blade Runner. There's so many science fiction movies he's been involved in. So it was really a pleasure to work with him, and a lot of other great guys too. And some people that actually weren't even part of the Aliens movies, but are relevant in science fiction. For example, there's a great television series called Battlestar Galactica, the newer Battlestar Galactica, and the head writers, Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, these guys wrote the first script treatment for Aliens Colonial Marines, and they took our outline and they gave life to these characters. So when our game writers, when Mikey Newman sat down to write the in-game script, we knew who the characters were, and we knew what their personalities were and their behaviors would be like, and what their attitudes were, and we knew some of the things they'd been through. And we have all this awesome material too from these guys. Outstanding writing team, out of Hollywood, that I think that somebody could make a season of television from the material they've created for us. So it's just been a lot of fun working with some really great talent on this.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Cheers.
Atomix PG.